Can Zhen Huan, blessed with both beauty and talent, truly outshine all in the imperial harem and enjoy everlasting favor? Jin Shi, sensing my displeasure, dismissed everyone and brought me a cup of tea, whispering gently, "Miss, have some tea to calm your nerves." I clenched my teeth slightly, almost hurling the tea cup to the floor in a fit of anger, but ultimately restrained myself and slammed the cup down on the table, causing tea to splash out. I exclaimed angrily, "Great. Now everyone seems to think they can trample over me." Jin Shi offered a conciliatory smile. "It's understandable for you to be upset. It hasn't been long since the incident with Princess Wen Yi, and now His Majesty wants to restore Consort Hua's authority over the 6 palaces. It's indeed disheartening." Taking a deep breath, I felt a profound sense of desolation, burdened with deep grievances and shock, yet there was a certain resigned clarity. Such is the nature of imperial affairs. Why should I have expected anything different? Silently lost in thought, the gold armor on my right ring and little finger screeched lightly against the pearwood table, leaving faint white marks. Suddenly, with a thud on the table, I said coldly, "No wonder His Majesty's decision leaves one cold. Consort Hua's family background is formidable, and they have military achievements. They are not to be underestimated. It seems we've dealt with the immediate situation, but I fear old issues may resurface in the future." Bitterly, I added, "Now they dare accuse me of poisoning the princess, and in the future, with the authority to manage the 6 palaces, who knows what will happen? I might end up with nowhere to lay my body in death." Jin Shi looked down at her toes and said, "With the southwestern battles increasingly victorious, this matter is likely to be pushed more aggressively. It's only a matter of time, and you need to be prepared early to avoid any mishaps." She respectfully continued, "Originally, when Miss Mei Zhuang was favored, His Majesty intended for her to learn about the affairs of the 6 palaces. But first, Consort Hua was suppressing her tightly, and second, Miss Mei Zhuang fell from favor so quickly that the matter was dropped." I listened intently, lips pursed as she finished. "Mei Zhuang was among the first of us to be favored upon entering the palace, and naturally, His Majesty regarded her differently. Unfortunately, I was favored later and lacked seniority, not to mention Lingrong, whose background is even less favorable. As you just heard, there's still no indication from His Majesty about releasing Mei Zhuang." Jin Shi thoughtfully said, "Outsiders are one thing, but it's the enemy within that's harder to guard against. Please forgive my presumption, miss, but this morning at breakfast, Miss Huanbai seemed a bit too clever for her own good." I looked at her coldly. "You noticed that too?" Jin Shi nodded. "Perhaps I'm just being overly concerned." Lost in thought for a moment, I eventually took a sip of tea, saying slowly, "It's not that you're overly concerned. It's commendable that you're so observant. Others are probably still in the dark." Unable to suppress the turmoil of indignation within me, I gave a cold laugh. The autumn sun, shining warmly through the window screen, left me feeling an indescribable coldness and sorrow in my heart. It was her, Huanbai, harboring such intentions. I treated her so well, as if she were my own sister, and yet she couldn't restrain herself, behaving this way towards me. I paused, not finishing the thought. Jin Shi pondered for a moment before cautiously asking, "Do you still intend to reward Huanbai with that piece of lake blue silk?" I laughed bitterly in response. "Reward her? Of course. And add the pearl necklace from my vanity to her gift. The Emperor has made it clear he doesn't consider her significant. I'm curious to see what trouble she can stir up next." Jin Shi bowed and acknowledged. "As you wish." I continued, "I suspect Huanbai might have leaked information about the incident at the Water Green Xuanfeng Hall involving Chao Qinma, and she might also be involved in the recent incident with Princess Wen Yi. Wasn't it she who took the initiative to bring back that cassava flower?" Jin Shi sighed softly. "It's hard to fathom people's hearts. Miss, you've been so kind to Huanbai, and she's been with you since childhood, yet it's come to this. Now it's unclear whether she's secretly aligning with Consort Hua or Chao Jieyu." I slowly caressed the smooth teacup, pondering for a moment before saying, "I suspect Consort Hua wouldn't meet with her directly, probably through Chao Jieyu. After all, Chao Jieyu and I haven't openly broken yet." Gazing out at the distant blue sky, as clear and bright as the day I entered the palace, even the southward flying geese seemed like those from the past. I couldn't help but sigh softly. This girl was also unfortunate, but her ambitions were too lofty, squandering all the plans I had for her. Pausing, I instructed, "When you deliver the items, don't show any reaction. We must remain calm in the face of provocation." "Jean," she understood. "I will be careful. But it must be hard for you, miss, to continue interacting with Huan by every day as if nothing's amiss." I looked at the colorful sunlight on the window screen and said, "The hardship I fear is yet to come, endless and boundless." The autumn sun was nearly blinding, bringing tears to my eyes, mingling with the forced smiles I had shown in front of Xianling, resulting in a mix of grievances that evaporated into the thin, fragrant smoke of sandalwood. The warmth of the early autumn sun was as intense as in summer, with the light streaming through the gauze windows casting splendid patterns, reflecting the luxurious silk and jewels on me and the treasures around the room, casting a brilliant array of light and shadows, yet rendering my heartache obscure and intangible. Memories surged like tides, overwhelming my heart in anticipation of the looming storm. In the crisp, clear tea, I suddenly recalled Xianling's light, carefree laugh, as if he was still the youth who once pointed to a small white evening primrose and asked with a smile, "Don't you know what flower this is?" I remembered that moment well, the ripples from that small white flower echoing in my heart. It was a tender and jade-like young man, on a bustling summer's night, who saw the hidden loneliness and sorrow within me. Indeed, Xianling's busyness was real. The southwestern battlefront had become his primary concern. The nation's grain and military supplies were organized under his orders, flowing smoothly to the front lines. His face always bore signs of fatigue, yet within that weariness there was also joy. Outside the Yuan Hall, I encountered noble Lady Tian with a forlorn look. She greeted me with formalities, and upon noticing Lu Zhu holding a food box behind me, her eyes flickered subtly. With a light smile she said, "Sister Jeyu is too kind, but there's no need to bother this time. His Majesty is occupied and not seeing anyone." I responded indifferently with an "oh" and a smile, thanking noble Lady Tian for the information. Yet my steps did not falter. I continued towards the Yuan Hall, leaving her astonished gaze trailing beside me. Li Chong, the chief eunuch, personally came out to greet me. "Miss has arrived. His Majesty has been waiting for you." I paid no mind to what expression noble Lady Tian might have been wearing behind me. In the world of human relationships, I knew it was impossible to please everyone. I could only take care of myself. Without disturbing him, I quietly took a piece of his favorite ambergris and placed it in the intricately crafted dragon incense burner. Once lit, the white smoke released a subtle fragrance, understated yet profound. He preferred to deal with complex state affairs in such a serene atmosphere, and I shared this preference. Now, I had the privilege to enter the imperial study to greet him. This special privilege he granted me elevated my status among the myriad of women in the harem. The afternoon sun shone through sparsely, light and ethereal like drifting clouds, casting dreamy shadows on the ground reminiscent of a young girl's secluded dream. I held the incense burner to the window. Xianling, engrossed in his work, looked up at the scent, smiled slightly at my presence, and then returned to his task. Yet I understood that the grievances and resentment stemming from consort Hua's matter were not alleviated by this tranquility. I maintained my smile, properly concealing emotions that should not and did not wish to be displayed before him. To him, with a smile as blooming as flowers and a demeanor both gentle and somewhat naive, I was most endearing. In such tranquil moments suited to my demeanor, I was capable of stirring significant undercurrents in the harem, intimidating and suppressing my adversaries with my gentle facade. At that moment, he was engrossed in a finely crafted map, his gaze lingering on the southwest, sharp as an eagle's. He spoke quietly, "I will reclaim the southwest. Huan." His focus on me was filled with grand ambition. The territory lost by my grandfather will finally be reclaimed in my hands. I paused, my smile blooming like spring flowers on branches, radiating pure joy. Huan is genuinely happy for fourth brother. His grip on my hand grew firmer as he spoke with determination. Beyond the southwest, the formidable threats to our dynasty, yearning to invade each year, are also a significant concern. Within my lifetime I will eliminate this threat, ensuring my descendants will not have to wage wars, leaving them a peaceful and prosperous era. I was moved by such a version of Xianling. one I had never seen before. Touched by his aspirations, I held his hand tighter, smiling. Huan hopes to stand by fourth brother in creating this era of peace. He looked at me intently and nodded deeply, determination in his eyes. Huan, I want you always by my side, and you will always be by my side. My era of peace cannot be without you. His gaze was profound, and for a moment, I felt a twinge of fear mixed with emotion. When I looked up again, the deep sorrow that had briefly appeared in his eyes was gone. I almost doubted my own eyes, thinking such an expression shouldn't accompany those words, leaving me perplexed and unable to decipher the mystery. Perhaps I truly had seen it wrong. After a quiet moment, I realized my heart was entwined with a vague joy and confusion. The bright and beautiful light, filtered through the intricately carved window lattice, cast faint shadows in the room, reminiscent of early spring's gentle ink washes. It softened the usually sharp and firm lines of his face when he looked at me, adding an unwarranted tenderness. I softly suggested, "Your Majesty has been focused on the memorials for a long time. Perhaps it's time for a break." I then took out a 4-color assortment of pastries from the food box, neatly arranged on a fine porcelain plate. Lily puffs, grapevine cakes, candied cherries, and pear meat good gentleman pastries. Sprinkling some dried osmanthus into a cup, I prepared a refreshing floral tea. He embraced me, his breath gently caressing my ear. "Would you stay here tonight?" I laughed softly. That would save a trip back and forth in the Phoenix and Dragon Spring Grace carriage. His Majesty is indeed thoughtful. Such playful banter, free from concerns, relied on his favor and affection for me. And in his eyes, everything I said or did was endearing. I nestled into his embrace, allowing my expression to gradually become indifferent. Yet, unresolved feelings lingered.
Follow us to avoid getting lost and enjoy endless exciting stories. For more content, please go to the Story Wall homepage to view more exciting novels.